Welcome to Song of America, the second episode of Song of America, a show that is dedicated to immigration to the United States, success in various forms, whether it's social, political, financial, it doesn't matter. But we want to explore the value of the American culture and lifestyle. And today we have Antranig, you could say Kzirian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
We've been trying to do this forever.
Yeah, but here we are.
How about that? On a holiday when we both have time.
Good old Labor Day. Thank you, Labor Day.
I think Sandra was a little like miffed that I was leaving, to come to work.
Same with me. I left. The kids are home.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll be back soon. Okay.
She probably had plans for me to clean up something. Well, we've had Sarah, my daughter, as you know, at the house because they were displaced by the fire. Yes. And so we have 3 grandkids and Connor and a son-in-law. And
full house.
He was sleeping on the couch this morning when I woke up. I didn't want to wake him up. So
yeah, I know they're going through that. Yeah,
but you haven't been in Southern California all your life, have you?
No. So I was born in New England, in the Boston area, and I was raised in Philly. That's where I spent most of my time. And then I came to LA in 2007. So it's 18 years now.
Philly. I'm reading that book I was telling you about, Under the Wings of the Almighty, which is about an Imagine who came here as a pastor, and he lands in Philly. And then he meets a Callum Carrion, a Reverend Callum
we were
Carrion,
texting about
right?
this.
And we were talking about that. And I just got to that part yesterday when I finished the book, and I was desperately this morning at 3 a.m. was Googling Levon Callum Carrion.
Any hits?
I found the obituaries of his 2 sons.
Oh, wow.
Charles, his name was Charles, actually. But anyway, a lot of Armenians in Philadelphia.
Yeah, there's at least 4 or 5 generations there. I'm 4th generation on my dad's side. 5 churches, there's an Armenian school, and the communities moved around in the city, over time with that, socioeconomic changes and things like that. But it's a small but tight community. I'd say maybe 40,000, 50,000 Armenians there total.
Wow, it would seem,
yeah.
Well, the Armenian church.
Yeah, I went to St. Gregory's. That's where I grew up, served on the altar, did that whole thing. And then there's 4 other churches as well.
Yeah. Because this was, he was preaching at the Armenian Brethren, I think, and they moved it to Pasadena. There's one in Pasadena. There was.
Okay.
But I was interested.
Was it a Protestant church?
Yeah.
Because there's one in Philly, I think, Holy Martyrs.
Yeah. So, but where is the family originally?
Okay.
From?
So on my father's side, my ancestors, my great grandfather came from Sepastia, which is an old province in what is today in Asia Minor in Turkey. A lot of Armenians used to live there pre-genocide. And then also Yozgat and Arapgir.
So I haven't heard any of those. The first one.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look on the map where the Armenian genocide numbers are, with the big red circles, unfortunately, Sepastia is one of the big red circles. A lot of Armenians were taken out of there.
What were those villages known for?
Well, those villages were known for big Armenian communities generationally.
Is there trade that they came out of, like Eintapses can cook and Barskais can't?
A lot of merchants and a lot of musical tradition too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were even certain dances from that region, which we kind of preserved over the years. Arapgir was the same thing where my paternal grandmother was from. They had specific dances as well. And then my mother's side, my mother's from Aleppo. Came over here in the early 70s, but her whole family was Marashti.
Yeah.
And they were known for their particular kind of cooking, like chukufte and certain things.
My grandmother's Marashti.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Wonder if my mom's family might know you're that side of your family.
Well, I just think, and like even this Callum Carrion, this Reverend Callum Carrion in Philadelphia, who fled the genocide as well. And he fled from Eintap, where my family's from, most of my family. The 3 of the grandparents are from Eintap, and 1 is from Marash.
Okay.
And you got to think that the small villages like that, and the relationships were very tight.
Yeah.
They probably knew everybody.
For sure.
And that there's relationships that we would never know about, and we wouldn't be able to figure it out even with, 23andMe or anything like that.
Yeah. I think when a lot of those refugees and survivors came over to the States in like right before the genocide, some did, many after, obviously fleeing for survival. A lot of them came to the same cities on the East Coast, all over the Eastern Seaboard, like Philly, New Jersey, New York, Boston, and then of course Fresno on the West Coast too. There was communities there, and they all knew each other from the old country. a lot of them. And they would have compatriotic organizations or unions, like a Maraşçı organization, Sepastatsis, Kharpertsis, all that kind of stuff, which you don't see as much anymore. There's still some of that.
There's some, yeah.
Yeah, but back then, those were the main community entities, and it kind of kept people together.
There's a Maraş hall here somewhere in Altadena.
Those are relics of that time.
Yeah, right.
You know?
I wonder, actually in this book as well, I keep referencing the book, but he talks about the Russian Armenians in Los Angeles, which is, the Montebello Rusahais, which is the Greg Felikians, Al Kabalov families, which is really interesting to me. It never ceases to amaze me. And I grew up in LA, and we were part of the three churches that came together, which was Gethsemane, Masis, and I forgot the third one. But it never ceases to amaze me. There's so many enclaves.
Yeah.
And every time I go to an event, like we went to a wedding on Saturday, I don't know anybody except for my immediate friends that were part of that side of the family.
Oh, wow.
That there's so many different enclaves of Armenians that
Before I moved to the West Coast, I was unfamiliar with the DP Armenians.
Oh, yes.
And then, I had heard about it, but we didn't live it and see it and observe it. Like they weren't around in Philadelphia. Right. Then when I came out here, I realized they had a Detroit connection. A lot of them had come to Detroit first or had relatives there, and then ended up settling in LA, mostly in Montebello.
So you're fourth generation. That's
fourth generation American Armenian, third born. Because my dad was born here. His parents, my grandparents, were both born here as in East Coast.
Really?
And then their parents came on the boats like 1906.
Which I guess that makes me then. Yeah. My grandparents came, and it was about the same time.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
My mom was born in Chicago.
A lot of them were coming to work.
Yeah.
They were looking for work to send funds back to help. And then they would go back once things started getting really difficult and scary. They went back to save who they could.
So do you know your family story? Is it written somewhere?
Yeah. So that's a great point. My dad and my aunt, my dad's sister, they have both kept some like stories of what happened with my great grandparents, how they came over. A lot of it's filled with like painful details, losing a lot of people, not being able to save everyone, losing spouses, trying to find them, remarrying, really kind of big trauma. Which I think would be pretty common if people looked into their family history.
Oh, for sure.
But the one interesting thing that I kind of picked up over the years, not to like include the music side, but in my own research and learning over time when I was young, I found that the music, specifically often on the oud, was a big part of that story and the healing, and also kind of where the trauma sat, but where they would try to grow out of it and kind of resolve those feelings and pains.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But no one sat down and said, let's write this story.
Well, they did. I remember when I was young, there was a family tree. I think it was either at my grandparents' like 50th anniversary. I was pretty young. And they between my dad, his sister, my aunt, and then their cousins in that generation above me, they made a whole big visual showing all the different branches of the tree. And I think they still have it at my aunt's house. It shows every detail.
I've been working on all kinds of media, and I think there's, wine, for instance, which is my vocation. There's not a lot of viewers, for wine. I mean, there's just a small percentage of people that would ever watch a show on wine. And thus is the point. My idea for wine show is not about what's in the bottle. It's about why it's in the bottle, like what the stories that got it into the bottle. Yeah. And you can have some interesting stories. And I was telling you about this book I was reading, and my grandmother wrote her. My mom insisted that she write her story. It's very interesting. My dad wrote 3 books for my grandfather's, his side of the story. I think we can tell the story of the genocide without it being this Armenian duduk, depressed. And for instance, I did a trailer for the show. I did Armenian wine. And the first thing the editor did, and she's a very talented Hollywood editor, put duduk music in the background. It comes on and you're just depressed.
Yeah, it's kind of like become this cliche-ish go-to.
Yes. But that's not what we want to portray.
Well, it's a beautiful instrument. It's part of the Armenian culture, but it's not the only. I think that the way I feel about it is it's incomplete. It's not telling a
Well, that's a good
big
point.
part of the
Yeah,
story.
that's a good point. Incomplete's a good point.
Yeah, and that's the funny counterpoint to like the Duduk monolith of, oh, this is Armenian and it's only this. There's this huge tradition of the oud, which is very much tied to these traumatic stories of survival and immigration and fleeing and dispossession, like losing everything, whether relatives through death and pain and suffering or properties and other things. When they came over, this was kind of like their main instrument. The oud was what a lot of the immigrant musicians brought with them, oud and violin, kanun, others as well. But that's where the identity, like they'll say the duduk's the breath, the soul of the Armenian spirit. To me, the oud and the strings and the wood is kind of like the fabric of the Armenian identity for those survivors that came.
So you're fourth generation.
Yeah.
Do you think that the general public, and I think they would respond to the oud, and we're going to talk about that in a second because it's in my family history as well. But what I was trying to get to was like, how can we tell these stories without depressing everybody? And so I was watching on the plane coming over here from the last trip to Canada, visiting Canada, was called 1923, and it's a Harrison Ford set in 1920s in the Wild West. And so it's telling the story of the Wild West through these people. And there's like 5 or 6 characters. It's a typical thing, antagonist, protagonist, girlfriend, the whole thing. But I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it be interesting to take some of these stories, like your family story, or this guy's story I'm reading now, or my parents, whatever the stories are, and set a miniseries in that period and follow the people.
Yeah.
And it would tell the story of the genocide through not look what they did to us, but there might be a sympathetic Turkish soldier in there somewhere, and there might be, that kind of thing.
I have that exact story, and I didn't want to get too much into it because, for a lot of folks it's trauma. But for example, on my mom's side, my maternal grandfather, Hrant, when he was very young, my mother would tell us a story when we were little about how they escaped from the Turkish soldiers in their village, and all kinds of horrible things, gunshots, wounds, fleeing, running, being thrown to the cousin from the roof, falling down, running, then being on the marches, not knowing where your cousins were or your siblings.
Right, the whole thing.
And then finding them at, somewhere else in an orphanage. I mean, awful stuff. And I mean, those kinds of stories do need to be told. And I would say the idea of like miniseries films, which have started to be explored, I think all in different ways. There's always opportunity to make newer and better ones too. I like that idea a lot.
It's just drama.
And I would love to have the right kind of music in those.
Well, that's true.
Because sometimes they use these things that are, a lot of folks just don't know. And it's just put it in, it sounds like a certain way. So having that ethnomusicological piece that's actually correct would be kind of cool too. From a nerd musician perspective.
Well,
had to sneak that in there.
Well, I was doing this reel on the Armenia. I shot 3 days in Armenia. I shot this thing. We raised some money for CivilNet. The footage is really good. They did a really good job of producing what they produced. But now I'm doing a sizzle reel to promote a show around it, and I used sort of a proof of concept, the footage we did in Armenia. And man, it changes everything. So, like I said, she put a duduk in there in the beginning, and it's like, oh my, that's not what we're doing. And then we spiced it up with some bass lines and stuff in it. And all of a sudden, the whole fabric of the show takes on a different feeling.
Yeah.
And I would love to put oud in there, but it's not there yet because I'm taking this to American production companies and saying, hey, listen, we got this idea. It's a Bourdain style thing.
Yeah, I understand.
So let's talk about the oud for a second because I grew up with it. As
I know, I heard something about that.
Yeah, you played my grandfather's Kzirian, and
I remember we did Happy Birthday.
We played Happy Birthday on it.
That was great.
And that was his soul, and he played it on the boat coming over here. And when he landed here, they landed in Chicago. They ended up in Hollywood, and he had a little studio up in his house. I still have his amp. Actually, it's right by here. This Gibson amp, Scout. And a couple of microphones. And whenever somebody came, including Udi Hrant, came to play, they'd go up there for hours.
You're turning up the dial now.
Yeah, and if a singer came, well, I have tapes. I've got boxes of reel-to-reel tape
to hear these
that I can't play because you're not supposed to play them until...
Are they reel-to-reels?
Yes.
Okay.
You need to bake them first.
Yeah.
Because if you play them without at least giving them a chance to revive themselves, you ruin them forever.
So Jack Chalikian, Kanuni Jack or Hagop, he Kanun master. He played for years with John Berberian and accompanied Onik. He was in the Keftime group. He has a ton of reel-to-reels as well. And when I would go over there to visit, and I learned a lot from him over the years since I moved to LA, because he lives in LA, and he would put the reel-to-reels on, and you can hear it. You can feel and sense the room, the air, just a completely different
the warmth
quality.
Of magnetic recording is amazing. So
it captures it all.
I did run into a guy in Armenia who restores vintage reel-to-reels. Problem is, I got to ship, 100 pounds of reel-to-reels to Armenia. And we know
next
in LA,
time you visit, suitcases full of reels.
But you bake them, right? You put them in an oven, but I don't want to screw around.
Yeah, but you got to make sure you know what you're doing there.
Because
then they're gone again. They're on the other way.
We could find some amazing jam sessions with.
Oh my God, that would be incredible.
Because they're there. They're in this. We know they're there. We just don't know.
These were like house parties or just jam sessions?
Upstairs in this, they lived in the Hollywood Hills behind the Hollywoodland gate, and he had a special room. That was his room. And
see, that lines up a lot. So when I was at Columbia for my graduate degree, and although I was studying finance and diplomacy, because I have a kind of interest in those areas, I did take some music classes. They had a class on the Armenians of the Ottoman period, which was about this music, the oud music of that time. And as part of my paper, my project for this capstone, finishing the class, getting my complete the seminar, etc., I did a concert with Ara Dinkcan playing these songs, and I also wrote a paper interviewing the older oud players from my generation, or preceding generations rather. And they talked about Udi Hrant visiting, and enthusiasts and musicians would bring him to their houses, do house parties, big kefs, and they would just be in the living room or the guest room or whatever, clear it all out in the dining room, and they'd bring out the instruments, and someone might have a reel-to-reel, like you're saying.
That's what happened.
And capture it.
That's amazing provenance that you've peeled that back. Were you playing the oud when you went to graduate school already?
Yeah, so I started playing the guitar when I was about 8 or 9, and then over the years, whether ouds in America or ouds that my mother's family would bring from Syria when they would visit us, Arab ouds, in my teens I started to fiddle around with it, and try it out. But then around 17, 18, 19 is when I really kind of picked it up a little more seriously. And my first oud was from a Southern California luthier, Viken Najarian.
Really?
I remember I worked for 2 or 3 summers. I was working, odd jobs all around. I was at my great uncle's dry cleaners. I was at the supermarket down the street as a cashier. I saved up all this money, mowing lawns or raking leaves, shoveling snow.
Wow.
And then I saved up and I bought my first oud from Viken.
Wow. And when was that, do you think?
He shipped it out in 1997.
So he shipped it to Philadelphia.
And I remember he told me, because I was put in touch with him by Greg Negosian, who I think is a very close friend of his from Detroit, and he kind of helped me out with the oud. And Viken told me, this is the first oud I have on the East Coast.
Really?
Like Detroit.
So it must have been, let's see,
Philly.
What'd you say it was, 97, you said?
97, yeah. And it was an acoustic oud, just like this one.
So, and I'll give you a quick story. I think I told you before,
Please.
but for the listeners and the viewers, I had a software company in Claremont in 1985.
Okay.
So even now, we're talking 12 years prior to this. And I walked into the local folk music store, and there's a bunch of ouds hanging on the wall. And I'm like, what is this? Because I knew what it was. My grandfather played, and I had his.
Like, who's responsible for this?
Yeah. And they were crappy.
Okay.
And you could just see the work was not good. And then there's an article on the wall of this guy named Viken Najarian. And he lived in Anaheim Hills, and he did these ouds. Now, I'm guessing these ouds were for that kind of store. They weren't his premium stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it was around the 90s when we went to Continental Burger. And
That's
so
right,
I had
here.
completely forgotten the
Pasadena.
story. And the guy's playing the oud, and I said, this has to be him. So in his break, I went up to him, I said, are you Viken Najarian? He goes, why? How do you know? I said, because your face was on the wall at the Claremont Music Store. And it's when I learned and trusted him to take my grandfather's oud and fix.
Yeah.
And
He's a great luthier. He does
really knows
anytime
his
I
work.
need work for any of my ouds, he's the first guy I go to. We're very blessed, very fortunate that there's someone in Southern California who's a practicing oud craftsman and
Yes.
luthier. I mean, what are the odds of that?
Well, John Bilizichin, and I took lessons from him, wanted to give it to a violin luthier,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to do
Some of my musician friends in other parts of the country, they have to go with whatever's available to them.
that. Yeah.
So they'll use violin luthiers and others, guitarists, etc. But I mean, that's a great point. Having someone who builds them right here, and I know
Yes.
his grandfather Dikran made them in Lebanon back in the
Oh.
day, but they made more Arab style ouds.
Yeah.
See, that's an interesting part of this. A lot of the Armenians, like post genocide, a bunch went to the States and other areas east to Armenia, and many, of course, obviously went to the Middle East. And when they went to the Middle East, they kind of integrated into that culture. So the ouds they would play and they would build were more Arab style ouds,
Let's talk about
which
that
are a
for
little
second.
bigger.
They're a little bigger. They have a slightly different shape, but I always understood that the Armenians play 11 strings, the Arabs play 12, and the Turks play 10 or something like that. Is that accurate?
Well, I've seen different numbers on all of them.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
not,
I've seen the Armenians do 11 and 12, 10. I've seen them do different kind of strings. The difference has been like the tuning.
so the tuning's different?
Yeah, the Arab tunings are typically a step down, although they have many different tunings in their
But
various
the notes are
countries
the
and
same,
regions.
but they're stepped down.
They're stepped down mostly.
The distances.
Yeah, the distances, the relative fourths are
Yeah.
usually the same with some differences in the low end. But what I would call like the Armenian school, which is essentially folded into the old Ottoman tradition that collapsed, of course. Then the Turks have their own system now. But our school is mostly, in my opinion, kind of derived from Udi Hrant and a variety of oud players that went to Armenia, kind of as a separate branch. And then Udi Hrant and the tradition in the States.
Mhm.
All the East Coast guys, of which there are so many. I mean, he had 5 students. He had John Berberian, Harry Minassian, George Magardician, Chik Ganimian, and then a West Coast student, which was Richard Hagopian. Those were the 5.
Right. I know.
And then, of course, John Bilizichin was incredible too. I don't think he actually studied directly with Hrant, but that tradition kind of started or kind of restarted and was reimagined in America by all of these torchbearers, and they all kind of had a different approach. So growing up as a kid, hearing those guys,
Mhm.
it was like vanilla, blueberry, chocolate,
Wow.
almond pecan,
Right,
like
yes.
completely different styles. And then their derivatives, like the generation ahead of me, but behind them, like Ara Dinkjan and Mal Barsamian, they were like another version.
Wow.
And it's kind of, but to me, it was very enriching to hear and learn from all these different players. Like, I mean, I was lucky to study with Ara Dinkjan. I also studied with John Bilizichin when I moved here. I've studied with John Berberian. My first teacher was Ara Dermardirosyan. I saw the full spectrum of styles, techniques, sounds, ouds. And it was nice to me because it was like speaking of stories, it was a story of not only survival, but revival too, because it was alive and thriving. And that's one of the main things that I kind of hold dear with the oud, is not only just playing it to play the old folk songs, which is very important. But I think you got to do 2 things beyond that, in my opinion. You have to teach it, pay it forward. My teachers would tell me, you got to pay this forward. So I do my best to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to write new music, which is what I've been doing. It's very important to keep that tradition alive, breathing, living
You think that
into the future.
if I'm in the wine trade and I want to learn how to make wine, I would, after all my research and all the conversations I've had with the pros, I would do that. I would go to South Africa, South America, Italy, France, and make wine before I even started doing it for myself, to get this sort of worldly view of the whole concept.
Yeah, I agree. It's like kind of like cutting your teeth or building your chops, but you want to get the inputs from different data points, right?
Yeah.
At least that's how I think about it. Whether
Of
it's
course.
winemaking, wood crafting, oud make, whatever the skill or the trade is, right? I feel like it's really important. You build up your own skills, then you make it yours, kind of in a way,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And then you breathe your life into it, your vision of what you want it to be. And then you move forward from there. That was, I think, one of the main things that was taken away from the genocide. It was like a cord was cut. And it was hard to kind of reclaim and revive that cord and that lifeline. But we've done our best as Armenian oud players in America for the last 3 or 4 generations, I think. Even just like there was a period in the early or late aughts into 2010s, where I thought the kef scene, which is the music
it's
of oud,
definitely changed.
kind of went down a little
yeah.
bit. Because in the 90s and 2000s, I remember as a kid, we had a band called Aravod. The kef thing was thriving.
Yeah.
And Onik was going, the Richard, everything.
I think you're
then
right.
It kind of dipped a little bit. But the last 5 or 10 years, I feel like it's kind of come back, COVID notwithstanding.
I think that's accurate.
Which is great.
And the oud is the classic instrument. This is what's interesting to me about music in general. I self-taught myself the guitar. I suck at it. I played the banjo for probably 10, 15 years regularly. I could play and people thought it was interesting, but that was about it. But when I picked up the oud for the first time and started playing, maybe it's because my grandfather, maybe because it's my DNA. I don't know. It was, even though it was fretless,
Mm-hmm.
it was more natural for me to play that than it was anything else that I tried.
Well, how did it feel when you picked it up?
Yeah, I don't know.
Home?
I just knew it, and I didn't know anything about the notes. I knew music theory at that point because I'd played the banjo for so long. But and then the funny thing is I can't get Americans to twist their wrist. They all want to do like a guitar, and they can't.
I know.
They can't figure this out.
I see that with my students. Like, for example, speaking of the students thing and the wrist,
Yeah.
I teach oud at UCLA to their college students and
Really?
PhDs, grad students, as part of the Armenian music program. And it's funny. I mean, it's great to see people are interested, but I noticed that too with the guitar plucking.
Yeah.
There'll be an instinct to hold it like a guitar,
Yeah.
but that's understandable.
Okay. Yeah.
You just got to show like the form or the different form that's new to that student. A lot of shoulder, a lot of elbow, your forearm, and then the wrist, like you just said, to hold that muzrab.
But it wasn't for me, even though I'd never touched it. I just automatically, watching my grandfather, I just automatically just went that way.
Well, yeah, you knew what to do.
Yeah.
It was natural
It was just
and
natural.
familiar, right?
I know why music comes out of the Middle East. I suppose it's like any other culture, but Sandra's music, the Barsky music, it was the clarinet was the main instrument.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And ouds really weren't part of their kef time. Well, Barbarian was here, but for the most part, their type kef music is a different feel to it.
I know they use a setar, which is kind of like a plucked string
kanun,
instrument.
A lot of
kanun. They have violin. And they have something called a barbash. Or no, barbat. I'm sorry. Barbash is an Armenian dance leader. Barbat is like an oud, but it's 5 courses instead of the 6.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's tuned a little bit differently, but it's a similar instrument, but a little bit different tone. But they're related because they say the oud comes from that region historically, kind of from like ancient
it seems like
Mesopotamia.
there's an Arab version, a Turkish version,
Yeah,
Armenian version.
I think it originated there, and then
that.
through trade routes and cultural exchange, it kind of developed and moved all over the place.
Lebanon.
But there's no question there's a very strong, long-lasting Asia Minor tradition of the instrument.
So you're talking about George Megadician. Megadician?
Yeah.
He was in Philly, right?
Philly guy, went to my church, and I grew up watching and playing with his nephew, Roger Jr.
Was he a player? Was he really good?
Oh, wow. So remember I was saying the vanilla and the different flavors? Yeah. So George and John Bilazikjan.
George was like a swirly cone.
Oh my God. It was like mocha almond fudge. I don't know. He was extremely technically gifted. Lightning fast precision.
Wow.
Like a classical oud player.
Yeah.
He played with orchestra. I think he was maybe the first to take the oud to play with an orchestra on stage. I think it was the Boston Pops.
Really?
Or was it the New York Philharmonic? Or
something
one of
like
them.
that.
But him
right.
and Bilazikjan were similar. They both were very avant-garde Western style playing.
Mm-hmm.
Virtuosic, lightning fast riffs and melodic control. They did a little bit of modal work too. They understood the modes, the microtonality and the technique, but they kind of adapted to making it presentable to a Western audience a little bit. But I'm talking in like a classical sense.
Right. Sure.
Whereas someone like a Barbarian also adapted to make it marketable or accessible to a Western audience, but in more of like a, I don't know, jazz, funk. Like Barbarian has that record, Oud and the Fuzz.
Does it have that versatility to make sounds?
Yes. Oh, for sure. I tell my students, it's an instrument like any other.
Yeah.
You can play any note, you could play a melody, you could play a song. It'll just sound like an oud.
Yeah. Well, it's got that great twang.
Right?
My mom would say, my grandfather would play Home on the Range. And she would imitate him because it had that twang to it. But it was all American song, right? Home on the Range.
I know.
That's fascinating part of that. John played also for the Philharmonic. I think he played the mandolin or something.
Yeah, and he toured with Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, right.
He did a lot of material, a lot of touring, a lot of shows with Western artists because he was extremely versatile. He did a lot of Hollywood film scoring. I think the Scorpion King, he did the oud parts on that. A lot of TV appearances. Wasn't he on Three's Company once?
Yeah, yes, he was. Yes.
Yeah, and I was at this XXX dance we just played Saturday night. They had their annual convention in San Diego. There was the Gong Show, Jeff Hovsepian and friends. Do you remember that?
I remember the Gong Show.
Yeah, with Letterman on there. Yeah. So I didn't know about this, but when we're performing that night, Jeff Hovsepian was there, who used to play the oud, and he had a group called Jeff Hovsepian and Friends, of course. And they were on the Gong Show in like the 60s or the 70s, playing Sude Sude. And Letterman's like, I'll give you a 10 out of 10 or whatever. It was like a talent show kind of thing.
Come on.
And you can find it online. I couldn't believe it.
That's hilarious.
But it shows you that, to your point, the music was kind of, we brought it with us as Armenians.
Yes.
And we were presenting it to the Western audience. And remember that whole 8th Avenue scene, like the New York scene with the belly dancing, it was a huge trend. You know, Rosemary Clooney singing "Come Over My House."
Yeah,
and,
right.
Baghdasarians, you know, the Chip. I mean, the Armenians were artistically kind of involved in mainstream culture, I think.
Is the Western music scene more tolerant, so to speak, of this kind of music and seeking some of it?
I would say yes. Because the oud has, I mean, everywhere I look, there's more and more people playing the oud. It truly has become this. Before it was like Middle East, Eastern Europe, North Africa. Now it's become much more global, I think. I mean, look, for example, I have a group, Visa.
Mm-hmm.
I play the oud. It's a rock band. And I play the oud there. I know System of a Down has used oud in some of their songs. So just as rock groups, and then I always hear electronic music with oud samples.
Yeah, I would love to see like a Korg or something that has a oud selection.
So
they do anymore.
I actually have a software company as well called Taksim, and we specialize in putting samples out for different instruments.
Oh, really?
And of course, along with ney and kanun, duduk, there's oud.
Wow.
And you can just press your keyboard,
that's
play
amazing.
It, and you get the sound of the oud.
You upload it into your keyboard.
Yeah, I actually spent a week, a few years ago, recording oud sample notes in the studio.
Wow.
Note by note, so people could reproduce it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what's interesting to me about instruments in general, banjos, guitars, mandolins, doesn't matter. You tune them differently. Each group, there's a different sequence. And it's based on what? Is that based on because the chord progression or jin? It's a jin and what they call it, chords on oud, a jin?
Yeah, so I know in the Arab system, they use that for the modes. We have the maqam.
John called it.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the Ottoman system, which is kind of where our derivative is from that, and we played a huge role in making that system and creating it, they would call it maqam, which is the same as jinn.
Yes. So
maqam is the mode itself. That means two things. One, the constituent notes like a scale, like a do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, like exactly like that. And then the second equally important element is that it's not just a scale. There's certain behaviors and certain modes, certain approaches to playing the mode, ascending, descending, certain modulations that are signatures of that mode, of that maqam. So I always like to think, and I heard this once and it stuck with me, a maqam is more than a scale, less than a song. It's kind of like a rule book or guidelines. And as long as you follow those guidelines, then you're competently interpreting the maqam for the listener who understands to know that you're doing it right. So there's a whole, it's not just science, it's like more art than science.
But you just triggered a thought of like the movie Crossroads, you know, where he meets the devil and he studied classical guitar. And the devil, have you ever seen the movie?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
Ralph
I'll add it to the
Macchio,
list.
And the devil, it's kind of like The Devil Went Down to Georgia, the song from Charlie Daniels, in that he jumps in and starts playing classical scales against the devil, and he outplays him. And so what's interesting to me about music, and I'm not good at it, but I understand the thoughts behind it, is that there's the scale progression of the Turkish scales or the Armenian scales, they're different, right?
Mhm.
And they produce that feeling. I mean, is it the scale progression that produces the feeling that produces
Yeah.
Armenian music, that produces Turkish music, that produces
The one thing I'll mention, I'm glad you mentioned this. So there is evidence of the Armenian church using these modes, which some call Turkish today, way back as far as the 8th century.
Wow.
So the Seljuk Turks invaded Asia Minor in 1100, which is about 300 years later, 300 or 400 years later. And the Turkish ethnomusicological historians have said themselves, and this is all in there's a book called Western Armenian Music that one of my mentors, SOA Kzirian, put out. He's a accomplished, legendary clarinet player who played this music, and he did a ton of research on all this. And the Turkish original music is pentatonic, kind of like East Asian music. So, of course, like any conqueror, when they arrived, they assumed and absorbed the local culture, including the music. So there's evidence of the Armenians using these scales and modes before anyone ever invaded.
Wow.
So the funny thing to me is when someone says something sounds Turkish, it's very complicated because we were using the scales before anyone else arrived, along with the Greeks and others who were in that region.
That's kind of like why Armenians are blonde, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple in the cooking. I mean, it kind of goes on and on, right?
Yeah, right.
But
you wouldn't think about music though necessarily,
right? And it's important because those modes show that we were. I mean, the history shows we were using those modes way before, and then those certain, like you said, the feeling you get when you play, those modes being used in the church was a huge part of the development of Ottoman classical music. It's well known in Turkey today. Many of their top composers were Armenians. Many. I have a list at home of 50 plus Armenian composers. Now, there is stigma in Turkey, of course, because of the history and the cultural issues, right? They don't really accept what happened in the past, although many do know, and I feel like it's kind of growing in terms of that awareness. But I've talked to Turkish musicians at the conservatories. They all know. Some of the pieces they play is all by Armenians.
Wow.
Tatios, Sebu, Serkis, Bimenshen. I mean, I could go on and on. And they would use those modes in their music, which was also being used in the church.
That's phenomenal.
And Jack Chalikian, who we mentioned earlier, he would tell me that Turkish composers could be seen, he would hear stories, they would be seen outside the Armenian churches and the Greek churches, listening to the Badarak to see what melodies they could use because it was interesting and different.
This is tying into that book that I want you to read, which I'll get you.
Please.
Because this guy was a violinist and he was self-trained and he was able to go to college, but constantly fleeing and literally leaving in the middle of the night sometimes to get to the next city so he wouldn't be caught by the Turks.
Yeah.
But ultimately becomes the Turkish city's music teacher.
Okay.
Now he's Armenian, full, right?
Sounds familiar.
And now here he is in a Turkish town. He's the for the men's college and the women's college, the lead music instructor, and the mayor, dignitary of the city gives him a hall pass that says, if anybody stops you, a Turkish guard, policeman, you present this paper, they can't touch you. It was kind of like Casablanca, the Charles de Gaulle.
If you're protected with this.
Yeah. And it was music that did it. But think about the influence. This guy was Armenian, and he grew up playing the Armenian versions of what he was doing, and now he's in Turkey doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, on that note, like Baba Hampartsum, he created what was used in Turkey for a long time as their Ottoman musical notation system.
Wow.
So similar to that, again, an Armenian playing a huge role in their music system, music education, classical composition, and so forth.
Pull that thing out.
Yeah.
And let me move the microphone for you. And I want to hear sort of maybe it's a little more academic than people would want, but I would like to hear sort of some of these, the concepts between some of these things we just talked about.
For sure. So a good example would be the Husseini Makam. So it's based on the fifth. So typically with the Husseini Makam, if you're going to present the mode,
Mhm.
you would start on the fifth, so your audience understands that that's the mode you're playing.
Oh, I see. Now, for the listeners, I wanted to know that there's no frets on this thing, so you don't you don't have
You're the fret.
Yeah, you don't have the 1-inch range on a guitar you get to make a mistake on.
Yeah. So for example, you would start with that to kind of establish the
fifth.
mode.
Now, would you take a song like, let's say, Dari Lolo or something and change the way it's?
So a lot of the songs would be in different modes.
Oh, so they're
Dari
written in that
Lolo
mode.
could be said to be in Husseini in a way. So it starts with
that's
and other, like, for example, Paro Viegar. So it starts with that.
Yeah, so the origin of a song like that that's starting in the fifth is deliberate. It's by design.
It's kind of a very blunt force modal rule, which distinguishes it from a lot of other modes. Because there are other modes that have the same constituent notes as Husseini. Like, for example, Muhayyer.
Mm-hmm.
It starts on the octave.
But it feels different.
Yep. And then its sister mode is Husseini.
Wow.
But kind of a little more relaxed compared to Muhayyer, right?
It's a different feeling for sure.
And then Ushak and Bayati, which are similar too, but they start on Ushak starts on the first.
Wow.
Kind of more sitting down on the tonic. But they use a lot of the same notes, but they have different rules of engagement. So they feel very different.
And with the Armenians and the Turks, everybody uses the oud. Were they writing this music to tell a story through the notes?
I believe so. I think music is storytelling, kind of like to your earlier point. It's a lot of storytelling. It's emotion. It's healing from trauma. And that's why I think the oud really resonates with Armenian Americans. It's a vestige of a past that was lost. It's a connection to home. And it's also, as I was saying before, with original music, it's a new beginning to like reclaim and revive. And I think that's a big part of the human condition too, to survive, take it forward, teach others, grow the tradition, because it's a living, breathing art, in my opinion. So we shouldn't just play, as oud players, I believe, my humble opinion, we shouldn't just play the old music. We should learn it, preserve it, but then we should renew it, write new folk songs, because I got news for everybody. Those folk songs, someone sat down one day years ago and made it up.
Yeah, right.
It came from somewhere. They were out harvesting in the fields with their hoes or whatever they were doing, or making honey, or, kneading bread and singing songs and with their instruments. It came from somewhere.
Sure.
We continue to live. It tells our stories. So I feel like you have to continue that tradition and kind of create new music.
So what's come out of that concept with the newer, younger generation of oud players that show up at a kef time? Let's just take it to, for the listeners, let's take it to, what's the movie with Michael Fox and
Back to the Future.
Yeah, Back to the Future. So he shows it.
One of my favorites.
Leave it up. He gets up there and he plays the music of the future.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody
he's like, you got to listen to this new sound. Remember we put the phone?
Yes, and everybody looks at him like, oh, your kids are going to love this. Is there that sort of a relationship with the, or is it too traditional, too authentic to?
No, so that's, I love that question. And that's kind of a big part of what I do with my music. So this really strikes a chord, no pun intended, with me.
Right.
Definitely. So, okay, when I was growing up, I grew up in Philly. So in the 90s, 80s, 90s, I was listening to rock, the pop music of that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had kind of this hybrid lifestyle musically. I would listen to all these rock bands, metal bands, and then I was in love with my oud and my Armenian music. So naturally over time, there was like a convergence of sorts. And I would play guitar in rock bands. I would play oud at home, listening to the greats.
Wow.
You know, Hoodant and all the guys.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And over time, when I moved to LA, when I did a show with the Visa guys, it was like the universe had kind of come calling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Middle Eastern rock fusion blended together. The oud was at home perfectly. And I was, as a human being, like in the right setting,
Wow.
right family.
How interesting.
And all that time, it kind of struck me as you have to take it into the new generation. You have to move it forward into the future. And I'll say of course, writing original songs with Visa, that's a big part of this. It does sound like an oud, but to me, we only think it sounds traditional because we are growing up and spending time here, where these instruments are kind of museumized,
Yes.
I guess I'll call it.
Yeah, they would.
But they're very modern and normally appearing and sounding like contemporary sounds anywhere else where the instrument is naturally occurring, right? So I try to maintain some balance on that. But the one thing I do want to mention as original music and keeping this music alive, I'm very excited too, because just in the past couple of weeks, I've been talking to some close friends and colleagues. I'm going to start a new record of original oud songs that I've written, I've kept in my log for 20 years now. About 50 plus songs.
Oh, cool.
All original compositions. Ara Dinkjan's been a big inspiration for me. He was my teacher. He calls me, or we talk once in a while, and he's like, have you recorded those songs yet? So it's finally time. And I'm going to be doing it in partnership with UCLA, with their Armenian music program.
You got a studio there, and
yeah, so they have a great program, and they're also very supportive of the oud being included. Remember we were saying incomplete?
Mm-hmm.
They're very supportive of completing the picture of Armenian culture, where it's not just one instrument or one sound or one region. Because although there's an Armenian homeland, that's just on a map. In reality, there's so much more than that. That's part of the Armenian culture.
So you do this magnetic?
I'm sorry?
You're doing a magnetic tape, or are you going to do it digital?
I would love to do it on tape.
Probably
but
don't have that 12 track.
It's funny you say that. So the first Aravod record we did, which was Until the Night, we did it on tape.
Wow.
I'll give you a copy.
Because I still have.
You can hear the difference. The second record was digital.
No
you
question.
Can completely hear the difference.
It's pretty interesting because I finally figured that out, that regardless of the sampling rate for a digital song, there's still, even though it's 40,000 gaps a second, there's still a gap between the tone, the input, and the recorded version of the input.
And it comes through sonically.
And it's not with the...
You can tell that I still listen sometimes to those two records, night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, the digital and the analog, they both have their good and bad. The digital is very easy to work with, quick editing. It's easy to, process. The analog is a different ballgame. You got to be, rolling up your sleeves for the analog, which is fine. I mean, that's how it was done. And the sound is warm and real, reverberates differently. But maybe I will. Let's see. That's good food for thought.
I still have John Bilzichen's direct to disc. I don't know if you know what that technology was, but right when magnetic music, was the next technology was no editing.
Okay.
And so they recorded right from the microphone. It laid down the track on the vinyl.
Oh, wow.
It's called direct to disc, and it was hugely popular for classical music and stuff. And John did an album. So you can't make a mistake. You make a mistake, there's no editing.
Yeah. You just
play
got
it straight through the half.
Yeah.
What are those? One side's about 25 minutes, whatever it was. You just play it straight through.
Yeah.
And I still have that somewhere. Of course, finding a turntable to play it on is probably a different problem.
Oh, I got to check that out.
Yeah, I'll find it. I have it in a box.
Yeah,
somewhere.
and I mean that reminds me, John, studying with him was an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, I drove down Anaheim Hills.
Yeah, I would go see him. It was at Mission Viejo. I forget where. I mean, interesting personality. God rest his soul. but a phenomenal, unbelievable musician.
I love his son. He's great.
Yeah, I would perform with George frequently.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So I want to tell a story about John Megadjian in Philadelphia, and then I want to hear some contemporary music
Sure.
on the thing. But I forgot how I learned about George, but I ordered an oud from him, and he right. This is the one, right?
You're talking, yeah, George Megadjian.
Yeah,
yeah.
And so he sent me first this box of wood samples to design the stringers and everything.
Wow.
And so I got zebra wood and mahogany and all this crazy stuff. And then I picked them, I sent them back, and I kind of forgot about it, but it had been a couple of years.
Okay.
And I kind of got annoyed. And my typical business self, I said, I'm gonna write this guy, a firm letter. This guy's in his basement in Philadelphia. Now I know he's this famous oudist, and here's this punk kid in LA going, "Hey man, where's my oud?" So
that's hilarious.
About a week later, I had totally. First of all, the timing was terrible because he was on it, he was building it. I had no idea how long it should take. It literally arrived within, let's say, 2 weeks from that point. So he did not respond to my letter to the sense of,
well,
I better hurry up. It was already in the process.
He went to Juilliard for clarinet.
Did he really?
Yeah, but he loved playing the oud, and he was part of that 8th Avenue scene where Middle Eastern music and the oud and all the Armenian oud players that played it became very trendy.
Wow.
So there's a story I think of one of the Gulf states royalty, a sheik or something, that had seen him play and was so he fell in love with his style and so enthralled with it that he commissioned a whole record of jazz with oud.
Wow.
That he did.
Jazz too. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the thing arrived and I undid it and it stunk to high heaven. The cigarettes. It just was reeked. There was foam in this box, and I sent the box back to him. He wanted it back, and it took a little while for the oud to relinquish the smell. But then I found out that he ended up passing away from. And they said yes, that's what his basement was like. It was stuffed with cigarette butts and things. It was just ashes.
So that was a John Merjanian.
Merjanian, sorry, not Megadjian.
Yeah. So John, totally. John Merjanian. I have an oud from John Merjanian.
Yeah.
I keep it in a lower tuning because it's thicker wood. Viken has done work on it. It was the oud that Ara Dinkjan used on his Night Arc recordings.
Wow. So he was a pretty preeminent builder.
Yeah. And
luthier.
Another Philly guy. This oud was built by Edward Hoplamazian, who's a Philadelphia product as well. His brother, Jack Hagop, also makes ouds. And Jack's son, Eddie's nephew, David, is a very good friend of mine. He plays the violin and the oud as well. And I was blessed they sent this to me as a gift a couple years ago. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to hear sort of maybe some jazz, maybe some rock and roll.
Oh, yeah. So you mentioned jazz.
Yeah.
I mean, how can we not do Take 5? Which is probably the most famous jazz song ever in history, which is based on the rhythms of the East.
Now we moved into La La Land.
Yeah. So like Brubeck and those guys.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think the story is they were on some kind of State Department trip, like commissioned trip for musicians to study the music of the world.
Yeah.
And they heard a Tamzara style beat, but they didn't quite understand what it was. So they made a song in 5. So... So that's Take 5.
Crazy.
How cool is that, right?
Yeah.
So there you got your jazz, you got your Middle Eastern influence on jazz.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, world-renowned song in 5/4 time.
Wow.
So, and there's a lot of Armenian songs in 5/4. You can't help but think, right?
Yeah.
As far as kind of rock contemporary, I mean, a couple things maybe, or just a quick choice from my group. It's a song called Magic Ladder.
Yeah, that's great.
And then as far as original music goes, I'll actually, you know what? Why not? I'll share it here.
Okay. contemporary sound out of that.
Yeah, I mean,
The
you know,
way
it's
you're-
kind of the higher register on the
Yes.
oud.
Plus your sequence is very modern.
Yeah, you know what? Because I kind of go over this with my students too. Down here in the lower part of the fingerboard, there's like the more traditional
Those are most of us
approaches. But if you're going to play higher up in a particular key, you have to almost use finger positions like a guitar.
Yes, right.
So
Yeah, I've noticed that it's more guitar lickish. You can't get much past the body anyway, right?
yeah, I mean, they have carve outs. I've seen some.
Oh,
people
come on,
have.
really?
Yeah, so you can play those notes a little
Yeah,
easier
yeah,
up
right.
here. But yeah, I mean, you can reach those notes again. It's an instrument like any other.
Yeah, no, it's
So
beautiful.
you just got to adapt. You know, so you got jazz, rock, original, good stuff, right?
We're already on an hour,
Yeah.
which is amazing. We could probably do this again because there's so much more to talk about. But what a fascinating trek to get to this moment,
Very much so.
and for you and your history and your. Well,
Yeah.
what is your day job?
So I'm an attorney.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I practice law, but the music has been a passion of mine since I was
Yeah.
a little boy. I remember going to, you know, the church hall or a wedding or an AYF dance or a community picnic or something. And I would see the band. And since I was interested in music, I'd immediately kind of go to where they were performing. And everyone, and I've written about this, everyone there would be like focused on the oud player or asking like, oh, who is the oud player? Oh, it's so-and-so, or it's this guy or that guy. Not that they didn't really care about or have interest in the other musicians, but the oud had this special place in the conversation, in their emotions, in their focus. And that stuck with me and left an impression. I'm like, why does everyone keep talking about the oud? Like, what's going on here? And then over time, I realized how special the sound was.
it's always been like the lead instrument in the band that is playing it. Like when you
Yeah.
don't see a clarinet and an oud in the same band very often.
Oh, that's actually, it's interesting you say that. That's a lot of what I've seen.
Lately,
What I've seen is clarinet and oud is kind of like
really,
the main melody instruments, and you know, the clarinet's the sustaining instrument, the
Yeah.
oud's the plucked instrument, and they kind of, you
Huh.
know, balance each other out, and there's a good synergy
used to-
there.
we'd call a trio in, it would always be one or the other.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe for a bigger group.
Yeah.
But it wasn't only the sound, it was also, as I started to kind of peel the layers back,
Mm-hmm.
there was all this history and the suffering of the genocide and the survival and immigration, family trauma, kind of the things we were talking about earlier today. And it was kind of intertwined with the instrument. Some of the musicians I interviewed for my paper at Columbia for that class, they all talked about this common thread of, well, when I wanted to go into the room where my dad had the oud, they always said, you can't go in there. Or something similar like, well, you're not ready to learn this instrument yet. Let's
Yeah.
do violin or something else. And I found that to be fascinating because it was a mix of the players themselves could kind of focus on, oh, well, I have the ability and I can handle it and I can deal with the past. Whereas the new generation, I want them to have like a fresh start, a clean start. But then inevitably, each of those musicians made their way into that room and got the oud. Whether it was Ada or Mal or Dave or all the guys that I interviewed. Because for me, that was fascinating to hear because I didn't grow up in a musical family that way. Me and my brother were the first in our family to really play seriously. Whereas the people I interviewed, their parents, grandparents, they were craftsmen, luthiers, they performed, they were professional players. So reading that and talking to them, and especially John Barbarian's interview too, it was a whole new world that really connected the reality of the generational trauma with the instrument kind of encapsulating the Armenian spirit
Wow.
to survive.
Forbidden fruit.
Yes.
You know, my grandfather's room, it was not active unless he was up there. And we always were a little intimidated.
That's
go in that
exactly
room.
what I found in my
Michael was
research.
there and
So you're confirming it even more.
yeah, it was. an
I'm
interesting
sure
part of
many
my
would
life.
say the same thing. There was something hidden and sensitive that they didn't want the younger generation to see just yet, perhaps.
My nephew is a very talented guitarist. He's in New Orleans trying to earn a career there. And I sent him an inexpensive Lebanese oud that I acquired somehow. And it's kind of interesting you say that. He's so talented, but he's not embraced this idea yet. He still plays like a guitar. He hasn't absorbed the cultural impact that he could have with it. He will, because he's a very talented kid and he practices and he does all those things. But one day it'll strike him, what he's got in front of him and what sounds he can make out of it.
I think generationally, sometimes it can skip,
Yeah,
or it can take a certain number of years for that next generation to be interested because they're growing up in a new setting. For example, I think about that with my family. I have 2 girls and a baby boy, and the girls I would play, might sound crazy to some, I would play when they were in the womb. I would ask my wife to sit next to me when I would come home from work, and I would play for them while they were in there. I tried to do it as much as I could every day. I don't know if it'll ever amount to anything, but the girls are very interested in music, kind of through like an immersion method. If I perform, I try to bring them with me. They'll grab a tambourine and like be on stage with Bubba. And then my son, it's so interesting. He always wants to go into the office where my ouds are. And I don't know if it's simply because the door is closed and I don't want him to break them.
Yeah, right. Who knows?
So he just wants the forbidden fruit, like you said.
Yeah, right.
But when he goes in there and he starts plucking them, he has this facial expression of such content and happiness, and like he's just, I'm here, I made it, like, and he's like plucking the strings, and it makes me think of all these interviews and what you said about I wasn't supposed to go in there.
Yeah.
And he's 18 months old.
How do you balance that, like your day job with? I mean, you play a lot. I've seen you around a lot, and you've just expressed how many times you played.
Yeah, so I'm thankful. I started playing the instrument when I was very young, so it's been 35 years, something like that. I'm not a mathematician, but I played for a while, and it's given me some runway where I'm blessed to be able to sit in, where I mean, of course, always rehearsing, and I'm working on becoming a vocalist as well for, performing this music. But as far as playing the oud, I'm blessed to be, if I need to play, I can just kind of jump in.
But you've got to work, and then you're out of the house again.
Yeah, and usually
how's that set around the domestic side of the
Yeah. My wife Liana is the most supportive, amazing person. Yeah, okay. So I'm very lucky that we found each other, and she supports my music. But I mean, thankfully, the music is typically on weekends, almost always. It's like a Saturday night kind of thing. So it really doesn't interfere with the rest of my life with family or work. But it does give me that nice little break to do something in the community and contribute the music, share the performance with folks, keep the tradition of the oud moving forward into the future.
I have 3 cars, the collector cars. Each one represents a family, something with the family. I have a dune buggy that my uncle, I don't know why that thing always runs out of time. It shouldn't, but anyway, that's focused on me anyway. Who cares? Yeah. My uncle and on my mom's side, my black Roadster, which was my dad's brother's car. And then I have a Mustang that was representative of his life as well. And I have the oud. Those are the 3 things that I want to make sure go to the right hands.
Yeah.
The 4 things. And that's it. The rest of the stuff I don't care about. But that Caribbean has to go to the right family member. And, the 3 cars have to go to the right family that appreciate the thing. I believe the oud's going to end up with my nephew if he embraces the music. The black Roadster, which is a Kzirian Roadster, will go to the only Kzirian son in the family because I had 3 daughters. And then they'll have to fight about the rest. Or I have to buy another car.
And if your nephew ever needs help on anything, I'm happy to.
You would enjoy playing with him.
Yeah.
He's a really intelligent guy.
Yeah.
Been an amazing concept. I hope we could, I think we ought to do this. And I brought this up with President Jim, and we had Harvey Hyde speak the one time, but a lot of social groups like Rotary, which I belonged to, my dad was a Kiwanian and a Lion and Rotarian. You do your meeting and then you have a guest speaker, and it could be 15, 20 minutes or half an hour. In Rotary, it's specifically a half hour. You get a half hour to speak. I really think we should do that more often and hear your story if you can tell a whole thing in a half hour, but
Sure.
take the oud, bring it up there, and just tell the story of it.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, whenever there's an opportunity. I've been fortunate. Whenever UCLA has their educational academic conferences, I've gone and I've given some remarks exactly in that vein. Speak for 15, 20 minutes, play a couple songs, or I can do longer or shorter, just to share the story of the music and the instrument.
How about USC Institute of Armenian Studies?
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't want to upset any USC Trojans, right? Equal opportunity oud lectures.
Well, your passion.
Happy to do it.
It's clear your passion and obviously your knowledge base and your study. And the only way that you can get to where you've at, not just your talent in music, but the passion it takes to study and understand it and tell the stories you just told, comes from your heart. There's no other way to do it. Wine for me is that passion. I want to tell the stories, and for you to have bit this off and to continue to dig deeper, to learn more, because you're never going to learn it all.
Of course, student of life forever.
To get it and to share it. It's really appreciated. I'm so glad you had a chance to come
Likewise,
in after
thank you. Thank you so much.
About a year.
Yeah, no, all good. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I think it's an important story, important instrument that needs to be told and shared with everyone. So a lot of kudos to you for making the time for this.
I actually got inspired, and this happens to me all the time, that I could bring down. I probably start with Vegan's electric oud just because it's easier to tune.
Let's do it.
And get my wrist going again.
Why not?
And I think it's inspiring to hear the story. So thanks again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks.